The new Just Transition Fund is an important instrument within the bigger European Green Deal. But what it means for the EU citizens? To discuss this, I sat down with the EU Commissioner for Cohesion and Reforms, Elisa Ferreira. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Commissioner, with the new Just Transition Fund now presented, could you tell me how important is this instrument within the bigger picture of the European Green Deal and, of course, within all the European Union's efforts towards carbon neutrality?
Well, I think it's a crucial instrument because the Green Deal will have a very strong impact in certain regions, that's for sure. Those regions that depend completely or almost completely on coal or very carbon-intensive industries. And so we needed an instrument that would help these regions to make the transition without major social, economic costs. So the Just Transition Fund and Just Transition Mechanism will not be the financial instrument to do the Green Deal. They will just tackle part of it.
So this is what's new about the Just Transition Fund. They will be focused exactly on the carbon-dependent regions.
Yes, carbon-dependent regions and regions that depend on industries that emit a lot of carbon and the other gases that we have got to cut. So the basis is regional. So it is directed to address very, very strong shocks in very specific regions.
Let's go into the specific regions. We have on the one hand Poland, the country very dependent on the industry. And at the same time we have Germany, the country very dependent on the coal industry as well. But of course these two are on different pages when it comes to the overall picture of their economic development.
You are absolutely right. Our decision was not to exclude completely any country. Not all countries receive the same amount of support because there is an element that is present in regional policy and this element is the relative prosperity. What do I mean by this? A country that is rich, that has a lot of, a very sustainable and robust level of development, is more capable of doing by itself this transition than a country that is extremely weak and that has to face a lot of development problems at the same time. This is what we call the relative prosperity element, and this is taken into account when you calculate how much is going to be available for this purpose in the different member states. So no country is excluded, but of course a country that is poorer will have proportionally more money to introduce this transition.
Would that work in parallel, giving the cohesion support and cohesion funds and the Just Transition Fund?
The Just Transition Fund comes on top in financial terms. It's a new instrument for new problems. Nevertheless, it anchors on the social envelope, social cohesion envelope, or European Social Fund envelope that the country has got. Then how can they trigger it? They will have to look at the region to see, okay, what do you want to do here? Of course, the selection of the regions comes from a dialogue between the member state and the Commission. So the member state is the one that selects the region, and once the region is selected, the member state, with the local actors, has got to make a plan and explain what are the components of this transition plan. With this transition plan, then you have a set of financial instruments that will help the member state to make this transition, and this is the seed money, so to speak, is this fresh money that comes from the Just Transition Fund.
Whilst we do have thousands and hundreds of thousands of jobs, of course, in the coal industry will be helped and will get those funds, people will be getting some help and support in order to carry on in their jobs, of course, when some jobs disappear.
Yeah.
While some citizens will be supported, others might be concerned about what's the impact for them when it comes to the fresh money.
Well, the fresh money comes to address this specific issue.
Would that have an impact on the expenses of the other EU citizens?
No member state can allocate the full of its, let's imagine in theory, the full of its regional fund or the full of its social fund to these specific problems. No, there is a limit, and this limit is 20%.
Why the limit is needed?
Because otherwise you would just forget about all the other needs in a country to address this kind of problem. So to avoid this over-concentration on the transition, these regions have a problem, but other regions have other problems. There are regions that are very far away from everything. There are regions that are very poor. So there is all these other other objectives that the country has got to address. And so for this specific purpose, you cannot put more than 20% of each of the funds.
And that's exactly what I wanted to ask you next. What are the other priorities and the other challenges that you see for the cohesion strategy, apart from the environmental issues?
Well, the cohesion strategy has got its own objectives set a long time ago. So you have regions that are peripheral regions, outermost regions, that suffer from outflow of people that are becoming very old. You have urban problems. There are areas inside the cities, even big cities, that are absolute areas of exclusion. So you have all sets of problems that you also have to address. So you cannot only look at this. Nevertheless, if we take this issue, the Green Deal, seriously, and we take it very, very seriously, we have got to do it in Europe, then you necessarily have got to green the whole budget. So the usual cohesion policy, according to the level of the regions, level of development of regions, has got to bear in mind the modern aspects of cohesion. So there are no old policies and new policies. So cohesion policy is going to be greener. It's going to be more digital. It's going to be more inclusive if possible. It will have to be modernized, and it is being modernized.
European Commissioner for Cohesion and Reforms, Elisa Ferreira, on Euronews and the Global Conversation. Thank you for this interview.
Thank you very much for your interest as well.